That low hum the old espresso machine made, like it was struggling to stay alive, a sound I heard every morning since I started working at the cafe. It always sputtered right before the first rush of customers. That morning, it stuttered mid-pour, and she was the one who noticed before I did. "Careful," she said, voice calm but firm, stepping closer. "It overflows when the pressure dips." I looked up and saw her hand hovering near mine. Not touching, just steady in the air like she'd done this 100 times. She smelled faintly of something warm and expensive, something that didn't belong in a place where the tables wobbled and the lights buzzed. "Guess you've seen this thing die a few times," I said, half a smile. She gave a quiet laugh. "I used to manage a cafe. They all die the same way, slowly, and right after you've cleaned the counters." Her tone was easy, but there was history in it, a kind of fatigue people only get from doing too much for too long. She wore a gray sweater, soft-looking, with sleeves slightly pushed up and a small gold ring that caught the light when she stirred her coffee herself. She didn't wait to be served. She moved like someone who didn't need permission. I learned later that her name was Ellen, though the way she said it, almost apologetically, made it sound smaller than it was. She was there most mornings, sitting at the corner table by the window, always reading something with a folded page. She read slow. The kind of slow that made you think she wasn't reading at all, just pretending, so she could think without anyone asking if she was okay. I was supposed to just take orders and clean tables, but I started noticing the small things. How she always paused before speaking. How her eyes flicked to the door like she was half expecting someone else to walk in. How sometimes, after paying, she'd linger just a second too long, as if waiting for a reason to stay. Once, when I was restocking sugar packets, she asked if I liked the job. "It's fine," I said. "Better than some things." She smiled. "That's not really an answer. It's the best one I've got." Her smile deepened, but it wasn't teasing. It was like she saw something I hadn't said, like she was used to people not saying much. That morning, her stepsister came in, younger, loud, confident in the way people are when they know they're being watched. She leaned across the counter toward me, flashing a grin that felt rehearsed. "Bet she doesn't make you burn like I do," she said, nodding toward Ellen, who was quietly stirring her coffee by the window. The words hung there, sharp, a little too bright for the hour. Ellen looked up, slow, and for a second, her eyes met mine. Not angry, not embarrassed, just aware. The kind of look that strips every excuse from the air. Her stepsister laughed it off and walked away, leaving the smell of perfume and something brittle behind. Ellen stayed a moment longer than she needed to. Then she set her cup down gently, the porcelain making a soft click. When she left, she said nothing. But I swear, when her hand brushed mine as she took the receipt, my pulse caught. Not because it was romantic, not even close. It was something smaller, quieter, like the space between two words that don't want to touch. I tried to go back to work, but the sound of that soft click, her cup on the table, her almost smile, has been replaying in my head ever since. The next time I saw her, it was raining, that steady kind of drizzle that makes the world look like it's behind glass. The cafe was quiet. I was closing up when the bell over the door gave its soft, uncertain chime. Ellen stood there, damp hair clinging to her temples, a folder tucked under her arm. She looked different, not composed this time, just tired. "Sorry," she said, brushing at her coat. "I didn't realize you were closing." "It's fine," I said, unlocking the espresso machine again without thinking. "You want something warm?" She hesitated. "I shouldn't. It's late." "You've already walked through the rain," I said. "Might as well make it worth it." That got a faint smile, small, unguarded. She moved toward the counter, dripping water onto the tiles. I noticed how her hands trembled slightly when she set down the folder. Not from cold, from something else. She told me she'd been working nearby, consulting for some small business project. "I thought I'd get used to this part of town by now," she said, glancing toward the dark windows. "But everything still feels temporary." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just handed her the mug. Our fingers brushed again. Her wedding ring, if it had ever been there, wasn't. "You live alone?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, steady but unreadable. "Sometimes," she said. Then after a pause, sometimes not. It hung there, not a secret, but something close. We sat across from each other at the counter. The lights were dim. The air smelled like rain and coffee grounds. She talked a little about her old café, how she'd sold it, how she still missed the early mornings when the whole world was quiet. As she spoke, she laughed once, a quiet, breathy thing that cut off halfway. I didn't know if it was because she found something funny or because she remembered she wasn't supposed to laugh like that anymore. She caught me looking and said, "You're very young. You know that? I get that a lot. And it doesn't bother you? Should it?" That made her pause. She looked down at her mug, thumb tracing the rim. "It should," she said softly. "But maybe it doesn't bother me either, and that's the problem." The silence after that was heavy, not awkward, just too honest. The kind you can't fill with small talk. When she stood to leave, she reached for her coat, but fumbled with the buttons, fingers shaking again. I took a step forward, not to help, just close enough that she knew I saw. She gave a short laugh at herself. "Getting old," she muttered. I said quietly, "You don't seem it." Her hand stilled. For a heartbeat, she looked right at me, the kind of look that says too much and nothing at all. Then she slipped past, out into the rain, her reflection vanishing from the glass door. The next morning, the mug she used was still there, ringed with the faint print of her lipstick. I didn't wash it. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It had that tired rhythm now, the kind that seeps into you. I'd started closing early because no one came in anyway, except Ellen. That night, she came with a box of pastries from the bakery next door. "Trade," she said, setting them down. "You make the coffee, I'll handle dessert." We ate at the counter, the lights half off, the sound of rain filling the spaces between words. She looked lighter, her hair down, her sweater sleeves pushed up, skin warm from the walk. "Long day?" I asked. She laughed quietly. "Long year. There was no makeup tonight. Just the kind of honesty that comes when you stop pretending to care how you look." Her eyes looked softer for it. Tired, yes, but alive in a way that made it hard to look away. We talked about nothing at first, bad customers, old jobs, how she still couldn't get used to the quiet after closing time. Then she told me about the call she didn't want to take. An ex? I guessed. Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Something like that. "He keeps forgetting that silence is also an answer." I didn't say anything, just nodded, listening. She stared at the table, tracing a circle in a drop of spilled coffee. "I used to think being with someone meant being known," she said. "Now I think it just means being tolerated for longer than usual." That one hit me harder than I expected. There was something raw in her voice, not bitterness, more like exhaustion. She glanced up and caught my expression. "Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay," I said quickly. "You can say things here." She smiled at that, slow and small. "That's a dangerous offer." A few minutes later, the lights flickered, thunder rolling outside, long and low. The power stuttered once, twice, then steadied. She laughed softly, the sound breaking through the heaviness. "You're calm," she said. "Most people jump at thunder. I kind of like it. Makes everything else quiet." Her eyes lingered on me a second too long. I felt the air between us change, not sudden, but unmistakable. She reached for her mug, fingers brushing mine again. This time she didn't pull back right away. "Maybe I should go," she said, barely above a whisper. But she didn't move. Neither did I. The rain hit harder, drumming against the windows. I could smell her perfume now, faint, mixed with coffee and rain. Her hand trembled just slightly where it rested near mine. Then her phone buzzed, sharp, loud, cutting the air in half. She flinched, looked at the screen, and turned it face down. "I have to," she started, but didn't finish. I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to ask her to stay. She finally stepped back, hand brushing the edge of the counter, eyes down. "You make it too easy to forget what time it is." And before I could respond, before I could do something I wasn't supposed to, she was gone. The thunder rolled again. I stood there, staring at the door, still feeling the warmth of her hand where it hadn't quite touched mine. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of it, that damp, metallic quiet that makes every sound feel too sharp. She hadn't come in for 3 days. I told myself I didn't notice, but I did. Every morning, I looked at her empty seat by the window like it was proof I'd imagined her. Then, late one night, I found her standing outside the cafe door. The streetlights made her look almost translucent, hair tucked behind her ears, eyes red in a way she probably didn't realize. "You're closed," she said softly. "I can make an exception." She didn't smile this time. Just came inside, sat at the counter, and folded her hands like she didn't know what to do with them. I poured her coffee anyway. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "You ever feel like you're just waiting for something to stop?" I looked up. "Stop what?" Her laugh was quiet, bitter. "Everything. The pretending, the noise, the ache of it." The way she said ache. It wasn't about pain. It was about endurance. She looked older that night, not in years but in weight. Her posture had collapsed a little, shoulders drawn in. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but that felt like an insult. "You shouldn't be here," she said after a long silence. "I work here." "That's not what I meant." She finally looked at me, and I realized she'd been avoiding it. Her eyes were damp but steady, like she'd rehearsed this confrontation in her head a dozen times. "This," she said, gesturing vaguely between us. "Whatever this is, it's starting to feel like something. And it can't." I swallowed hard. "Then why are you here?" Her throat moved as she breathed in. "Because I wanted to be." The words hung there, fragile and unguarded. Neither of us dared to move. Outside, a bus passed, its reflection sliding across the glass like a shadow. The world kept moving, but inside the cafe, everything was still. "You think I don't know what this looks like?" she said quietly. "A woman my age, sitting here, talking to someone your age, like she's forgotten what lines are for." I said, "Maybe lines are just what people draw when they're scared." Her lips parted, but she didn't respond. Instead, she pressed her palms flat on the counter and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something in her expression had shifted, less armor, more truth. "You're kind," she said finally. "And kind people make mistakes too." I wanted to tell her it wasn't a mistake, that I didn't even know what it was yet. But I didn't. The silence between us did all the talking. She stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. I thought she'd leave, but she just stood there, looking at me, eyes trembling, breath shallow. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "I used to think I was past wanting anything." And that single line, broke something open in me I didn't know I was holding back. The cafe felt hollow without her, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Every sound echoed longer than it should. The doorbell, the hiss of milk steaming, even my own thoughts. Then one morning, she was there, sitting in her usual spot. No hello, no small talk, just her, a cup of black coffee, and a small envelope sitting on the table beside her hand. I froze behind the counter. I almost didn't go over. When I did, she looked up and smiled, faintly. "You thought I'd disappeared." I didn't know what to think. She nodded, as if that was the answer she expected. "That's fair." The envelope had my name on it, my real name, the one I never wore on the name tag. I stared at it. "I asked the manager," she said softly. "I hope that's not strange." I sat across from her. The envelope stayed between us like something alive. "I wasn't sure if I should give it to you," she said. "But you should know why I come here." Her voice had that careful tone, the one she used when she was trying not to cry. "It's not about you," she added quickly, then paused. "Not just you." I slid my thumb under the flap, but she stopped me with a touch. Light, almost instinctive. "Not here. Later." Her fingers lingered for half a second too long. I could feel the tremor she was trying to hide. We sat in silence. She stared at the window, eyes following the reflections instead of the street. "My sister," she said finally. "Stepsister, actually. The one you met that day." I nodded. "She was married to someone who looked like you. Same way of standing. Same quiet. He died 3 years ago. Accident." Her voice cracked just slightly on that last word, but she didn't look away. She never really recovered. "And I." She stopped, pressing her fingers to her lips like the rest wouldn't come out. "And you?" I asked. I think I started looking for him in every man who was kind to me after that. The words were small, but they hit with the weight of something unspoken for too long. I didn't know what to say. I just watched her eyes move to the window again, That faraway look she got when she wanted to be anywhere but in her own head. After a long silence, I said quietly, "Then why me?" She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Because you don't try to fix me. You just see me." When she stood to leave, she touched my shoulder, gentle, familiar, almost grateful. The envelope was still on the table. "Open it when it's quiet," she said. "When you can hear yourself think." Then she was gone, leaving behind her empty cup and the faintest trace of her perfume. Something warm, something gone. I turned the envelope over once, twice. My name written in her small, careful handwriting. I didn't open it. Not yet. But for the first time, I was afraid to. It took me 2 days to open the envelope. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew once I did, things wouldn't go back to the way they were. Inside was a single photo. Faded. A man leaning against a car, smiling, sunlight cutting across his face. He looked like me, just older. There was a note on the back, written in her careful, slanted handwriting. "You reminded me that kindness doesn't have to hurt." That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just a quiet thank you written like a confession. When she came in again, it was evening. The cafe was almost empty. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the soft thud of rain against the windows. She looked calm this time. Not composed. Calm, in that deep, weary way that comes after you've stopped running from yourself. "I figured you'd open it by now," she said. "I did. And I set the photo on the counter between us. He looks happy." She exhaled through her nose, the closest thing to a laugh. He was. For a while. She sat across from me, tracing the rim of her mug. "I shouldn't have brought you into that," she said. "It wasn't fair." "You didn't," I said. "You just let me be here." Her eyes met mine, steady, unguarded this time. "And that was enough for you?" I hesitated. It was everything I didn't know I needed. We sat there for a long time. No storm, no interruptions, no words we didn't mean. The silence was different now, softer. It didn't ache anymore. She reached across the counter, slowly, as if testing the air between us. Her hand rested on mine, just barely. Warm, uncertain, but real. "I don't want this to be a mistake," she whispered. "Then don't call it one." Her thumb brushed against my skin, small, trembling. "You'll move on," she said. "You're supposed to." "Maybe," I said. "But not yet." We didn't move closer. Didn't kiss. Didn't need to. The connection sat there between us, heavy and unspoken, like something too fragile to name out loud. The light above us flickered once, then steadied. Her eyes followed it, then came back to me. "You should lock up soon," she murmured. "I will." But neither of us stood. Eventually, she leaned forward just enough for her forehead to rest against mine. It wasn't romantic. It was release, the kind that happens when two people finally stop pretending they're fine. Her breath was soft, her voice barely there. "You made me remember what warmth feels like." And then she pulled away, slow, deliberate, leaving her hand where it was for a heartbeat longer before slipping out of reach. No goodbye, no promise, just the faint scent of coffee and rain, and the quiet certainty that something between us had ended exactly where it was supposed to. The door clicked shut, and in the silence that followed, I finally exhaled. It's been 8 months since the last time I saw her. She doesn't come into the cafe anymore. I still look at the window seat every morning out of habit, but it's always empty. Just sunlight now, no quiet smile behind a book, no half-drunk coffee cooling beside folded hands. Sometimes I tell myself that's a good thing, that maybe she finally found whatever peace she'd been circling around for so long. But then I catch myself making her usual order without thinking. Black coffee, 1 sugar. And I realize I'm still learning how to let ghosts live quietly. People ask me sometimes why I still work here. Truth is, I like the quiet now. I like watching strangers drift in and out of their own small stories. The older couples who don't need to talk much anymore. The college kids laughing too loud. The man who comes in just to read the paper but always forgets to finish his drink. Ellen taught me something I didn't have words for back then. That connection doesn't always need to be named to matter. That some people walk into your life not to stay, but to show you how to see again. I used to think love meant ownership, momentum, some big declaration. But she showed me the opposite. that sometimes it's found in restraint, in the moments you don't act, in the space between want and respect. A few weeks ago, I found the photo again. The one she gave me, the man who looked like me. I keep it in the register, tucked under the receipts. Not out of longing, but gratitude. I looked at it today, and it hit me. I don't remind her of him anymore. I remind myself of who I was when I met her, quiet, unsteady, half asleep. She woke something in me that wasn't about romance. It was about awareness. Maybe that's all real love is, in the end, two people waking each other up for a moment before life pulls them in different directions. If she ever walks in again, I think I'll just thank her. Not for what we almost were, but for everything we didn't rush into. For the space she gave me to grow up a little, to feel something real without breaking it. Until then, I'll keep the lights low, the coffee strong, and her mug on the highest shelf. Unwashed, untouched, waiting for dust to do what time already has. Because some stories don't end with a kiss. They end with quiet acceptance. And sometimes, that's enough. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?